Okay, so what we're going to work on today is synthetic division. And so it's a shorthand way to divide polynomials, and we just focus on the coefficients instead of all the x squareds and x's and all the variables. So let's just do a quick refresher on on long division. And let's take this sample problem, and we're going to take x minus 2 is our divisor, and we're going to divide it in to this quadratic, x squared plus 3x plus 5. And so we're just going to run through our process, and we're just going to say x times what makes x squared? That happens to be x. Now I take that x and I multiply it times both parts, both terms in this binomial, and that goes under here, x squared minus 2x. So usually here that's pretty straightforward. It's the trick here in long division is the subtraction. That's what tends to make this tricky and where mistakes happen. So the x squared minus x squared, those cancel out. But 3x minus negative 2x, well, that means we're actually adding 2x. So we've got 5x, and then bring down the plus 5. Then we do the same thing all over again, and we say, all right, x times what makes 5x? And that's going to be positive 5, so I write plus 5. And then I multiply that times our divisor, so that gets me 5x and negative 10, and again with the subtraction. And so the 5x's zero out, and then 5 minus negative 10 leaves us with 15. So remainder over divisor, so plus 15 over x minus 2. So that's pretty easy, we're pretty familiar with it. But there is a better way. And so we're going to learn synthetic division. In order to perform synthetic division, one of the first things you have to do is when you're looking at our divisor, whatever we're dividing by, we need to find the 0. So find the 0 of your divisor. That's what's going to get everything started here. So I'm going to take that x minus 2 and set it equal to 0. If I were to solve that for x, I get 2. So when I start my synthetic division, this is going to look very different than long division. We have this little sort of box off to the left, and then we're going to have a line here. And in that box, we place the 0, whatever we got here. So 2 goes here. Then we take all the coefficients of whatever our dividend is, what we're dividing into. So we've got x squared, so that's the coefficient of 1. There's 1x squared. 3 x's and 5 1's. All right, so in long division, we did some division and subtraction. Here, it's going to kind of be different. We're going to do basically multiplication and addition instead. So we're going to bring this 1 down. And then I'm going to say, all right, 1 times whatever that 0 is in the box there. So 1 times 2 is 2. So I put that 2 here. And then 3 plus 2 is 5. So that's the key here. We add. We add over here, and we multiply here. Now I do the same thing. 5 times this 2 makes 10. And then 5 plus 10 is 15. So as we're looking at that, you can kind of see the 1, the 5, and the 15, what they relate to. This is the same problem that we just did in long division. That 15 is our remainder. So whenever we have this number in the box, that's our remainder. And then the 1 and the 5 represent the coefficients of our quotient. Now, if we did synthetic division and we divided something that was a degree 2 function, our answer is going to be 1 degree lower than that. So that 1 is going to represent how many x's there are. That 5 represents how many 1's there are. And then that 15 is our remainder, and it still goes over the divisor like we've been doing. So that's it. That's the process. We just need some practice with it. We're going to start by finding the 0 of the divisor. Then we set up our coefficients, and we'll go ahead and do the synthetic division. So the first thing we want to do is take this x minus 8 and identify what's the 0. So we take x minus 8, set it equal to 0, x equals 8. So you're probably starting to see the pattern there. And so in the corner, we go ahead and put an 8. And then our coefficients are going to be for this quadratic, and it's going to be 2. And then careful you don't miss that negative sign, negative 19, and then positive 25. Okay, so here we go. Bring down the 2. And then we do 2 times 8, which gives you 16. Then we add negative 19 and 16. So remember, we're adding, so that's negative 3. Then negative 3 times 8, that's going to give us negative 24. And then we add these together, and that gives us a 1. So again, we had a quadratic for our dividend. That means our quotient is going to be 1 degree less. So that 2 is 2x, and then minus 3 plus 1 over whatever we divided by. So go back to that x minus 8. So not too bad, just take some practice. Okay, so let's try another one. So you might already see the pattern here on the 0. If it says x plus 1 is what I'm dividing by, x plus 1 equals 0, that means my 0 is negative 1. So that's what's going to go in our little corner here, so negative 1. And then our coefficients, this time we have a cubic, and we do want to make sure we've got this in standard form. So we have negative 2x cubes, 3x squareds, negative 3x's, and 5 1's. And then we'll just get that process going. So negative 2 times negative 1 is positive 2. We're adding, so we get 5. 5 times negative 1 is negative 5. Negative 3 and negative 5 is 8. Sorry, is negative 8. Negative 8 times negative 1 is positive 8. So we get 13. So now we just have to translate that to an answer. So that's going to give us our answer here, which I haven't left a lot of room for, but negative 2x squared plus 5x minus 8 plus 13 over x plus 1. All right, so as we look at that next one, we have another cubic function, and we're dividing by x minus 4. So that means my 0 is going to be x equals 4. And so in the corner is going to be positive 4. And then if you look at that real carefully, that's a cubic, but it's only got 3 terms. So you got to watch out for a missing piece of information. So we have 1x cubed, we have no x squareds, negative 12x's, and 6 1's. So if you don't put in that 0 placeholder, we're going to get a very different, well, not a very different answer, but a different answer and not the correct answer. So we want to bring that 1 down. 1 times 4, add them up. 4 times 4, 16, add them up. 4 times 4 again, 16 and 6 gives us 22. So let's translate our answer. The 1, 4, and 4 represent coefficients of a quadratic. So x squared plus 4x plus 4 plus 22 over x minus 4. All right, so I think we're getting the hang of things. As we look at the next example, we have a couple missing coefficients. So we're going to divide by x plus 2, which means negative 2 is what goes in the corner. And then we have 1x cubed, no x squareds, no x's, and 8 1's. All right, so bring down the 1, multiply times our 0, add those up. Multiply times the 0 again. A negative times a negative makes a positive. Add those up. 4 times negative 2 gets us negative 8. All right, cool. So in this one, we finally have one without a remainder. So our answer is just x squared minus 2x plus 4. And so when we don't have a remainder, some interesting things can happen. And we're going to talk about those a little more in some future lessons. But it's convenient when we don't have a remainder because we have a nice clean answer. All right, this last example in this section, we're going to divide not once but twice. And it really doesn't matter what order we divide in. So I'm going to go ahead and divide by the x plus 3 first, for no reason other than it's the first one listed. So my coefficients are 1, 2, negative 5, and negative 6. And the 0 for x plus 3 is negative 3. Okay, so what we're going to do is a round of synthetic division. Bring the 1 down, multiply times the 0, add, multiply times the 0, that makes a positive 3, and add, multiply times the 0 of negative 3, get a positive 6. All right, so when we have a remainder of 0, we now have a quadratic. I'm not going to spend the time to take that 1, negative 1, and 2 and write them as x squared minus x minus 2. I'm going to jump straight into doing my next synthetic division. This time, though, I'm going to keep the coefficients that we have, and for x minus 2, that means my 0 is x equals 2. And we're only going to do it with these three numbers. That remainder is not really part of what we're working with now. So we did one round of synthetic division. We went to a quadratic for our answer. We're going to do one more round, and we're going to get down to a linear binomial. So bring down the 1. 1 times 2 is 2. Add them up. 1 times 2 is 2 again. And they add up to 0. So no remainder again. And the 1, now we're down to a linear function. So that's going to be x plus 1. So what we got down to when we did 2 rounds of synthetic division, we went from cubic to quadratic. That's what this one was, a quadratic. And then quadratic down to linear.